Hello everyone, my name is Gus.
Hi, I'm Woody.
Today we have another video request for us to react to. This was apparently a tragedy that happened in Australia, I believe. And they're asking us for our thoughts because this is based on a true story. Like, this really happened.
Isn't Australia like the country of tragedies? Like,
Okay.
You get bit by things, eaten by things, die by things. Everything there is
it's dangerous.
It seems like. I haven't seen this, but not surprising if it's in Australia. Although I love Australia, by the way. Amazing, beautiful country.
I love Australia, too.
One of the prettiest places I've ever been.
I've never dived in Australia, though.
Yeah, gorgeous.
We should do a Australian tour.
It would be nice if you took me with our credit card once on a trip rather than only. I'm just saying, a lot of times you go and then the credit card's maxed out. But let's go ahead and play the video.
All right.
Afternoon, Frank Warwick. 13 people are reported to be buried alive.
Hopes of saving 13 people trapped in a cave collapse on the Nullarbor Dreaming.
A massive rescue underway to free 13 trapped cavers.
They went up this road and into this cave, and that's the last time they were seen.
A group of 15 curious adventurers embarked on a journey that would forever be remembered as amongst the worst cave tragedies. Little did they know that their quest for discovery would soon descend into a harrowing descent into darkness and despair. This is the story of the Panicking Cave disaster, a tale that unfolds deep within the unforgiving heart of the earth. The Panicking Plains Cave is located in the Nullarbor Plain region of southern Australia, with passages stretching for over 5 miles. Panicking Plains Cave is one of the longest caves in Australia. Features include spectacular stalactites and stalagmites, intricate cave pearls formed by dripping water, and deep underground pools. One of the most notable chambers is the Grand Hall,
But it looks very diveable. Is it still diveable? Is this thing...
Well, I don't know.
Enormous cavern over 1.5 miles.
Well, maybe that
this
part's
captivating subterranean landscape drew in adventurous cavers such as Andrew Wright and his team from around the globe. Driven by the desire to be the first to map new tunnels and uncover geological secrets, Andrew Wright and his team's expedition in Panicking Plains Cave became a hellish 27-hour ordeal trapped underground rather than the thrilling adventure they had sought.
That's a long time.
The ambitious expedition was led by Andrew Wright, one of Australia's most skilled cave divers. Joining Wright was an assembled team of experts.
And there is no way back to where they started. They have to continue to explore the cave to find their way out.
Their daring objective, to be the first to explore the Panicking Plains Cave, vast uncharted underwater system lying 50 meters below the surface. The expedition was the cave diving equivalent of climbing Mount Everest, with the team being the first to venture so deeply into the site. They aimed to collect samples and conduct studies in collaboration with the University of Sydney, exploring never-before accessed areas. The expedition started off eager and excited as the team of divers, researchers, and support crew made their way to the remote Panicking Plains cave system. The first week was spent setting up camp near the cave entrance and preparing equipment like wetsuits, tanks, helmets, underwater scooters, and more.
That's where you and I are strong, is the whole setting up for a week with the tents and bugs and gear and
yeah, that's what we look forward to the most.
I think Mike pays more, doesn't he, to get bit by a scorpion here? Like, whenever we go somewhere, he's like, I just got bit by a scorpion.
Right.
I can't feel my thumb. I'm like,
he looks forward to it.
You need to go to the
You know what's
hospital?
funny is when we did that expedition with Mike in Mexico last year in 2023.
Is that the scorpion bite one?
Yeah. When he got bit by a scorpion, we offered to pay for a hotel room. Yeah. We're like, Mike, look, we'll pay for it. Just stay with us. No, I'm good.
I'm good. I like sweat and dirt. I'm serious. I'm not cutting him down. He likes being. He
likes to rough it up.
Dirty and bitten and
rough
it up.
We roughed it up too. It was 3-star hotel, if you remember.
Yeah, and it did not include breakfast, and that is
right. We had to procure our own breakfast. It was terrible.
I'm not roughing it. I'm too old to rough it like that anymore.
Safety checks were performed repeatedly to ensure all systems were functioning properly before entering the watery abyss. Once ready, the dive team started cautiously making initial forays into the flooded tunnels and caverns in the first week. By the end of the first week, the team had mapped and recorded details of the first few hundred feet of the cave system. In the second week, the divers pushed further into the submerged caves, laying guidelines and rigging underwater lights to mark their path. They started discovering large chambers and areas where tunnels branched off in different directions. Careful surveys were conducted to log the size and details of each cavern and tunnel while looking for potential routes forward. The most promising paths were marked for further exploration. By now, the team had reached nearly a quarter-mile into the cave system and were thrilled with the find so far. The first 2 weeks generated tremendous excitement and motivation to press on and see how far and deep the cave system extended.
Dude, when I saw that guy going in through that hole, it reminded me of a hole that I was exploring a couple months ago in Cozumel with John Littlestolen. So me and John were in this team. We're looking for passage. Like he said, the team was looking for we were doing that. And John, so I see this offshoot of the line to the left, and it looks like a little room back there. So I go there, and I go in, and the room is pretty small, and then there's a hole on the floor. And you see down, and it looks like it goes to like another level of the cave down there.
Which I would very much want
to
go
so
through.
I'm like, man, I look at it, and I'm like, bummer. I bet it's cool down there. So I go back to John, and I'm like, man, yeah, there's more cave down there, but there's this hole. Looks like the size of a straw. Sorry. And John is like, hold my beer, basically.
Gone.
So I tell him, go in, because the entrance was one person at the same time. It's very narrow. And I'm like, go look on the floor. So he goes in, and then he calls me. And I come in, and he's like, I'm going to go no mount. And I just laugh.
What was he wearing? What was his gear setup?
He had a Sidewinder with 2 tanks. Yeah.
That's hard to do, man. On a Sidewinder, no mount?
Yes.
I don't think people understand how hard that is to take off. It takes you and I a good 30 minutes to put the thing on.
So he didn't say hold my beer, but he said hold my reel, which is close to hold my beer, but more badass. So he's like, hold my reel. So I hold his reel, and he starts taking his tags off. And I'm like, oh, he's doing this for real. Now, as I mentioned in a previous video, I am normally, in situations like that, I'm normally like, I won't be the first, but if somebody makes it, I know I can make it, and I'll go. This was one of those where I was like, I hope there's not a whole lot down there, because this is going to suck. And he takes his tanks, then he gets another spool, like a jump spool, and ties it on the valve of the first tank. And lowers it between his leg, like below him. So, like, John is right here, the tank is down here, and he's holding it with a line. And then he grabs the other tank above him. He's vertical above him. So he's like, tank, John, tank, and he goes down like Santa Claus, dude.
Wow. All I can say is that's like, I want people that are watching this to understand the level that you need to be at mentally, physically, and every aspect of comfort with the gear to do that.
Yeah.
There's no chance I could do that.
Now at this point,
wow.
I'm not thinking about how hard this is going to be when I have to do it.
Were you willing to do that if you needed to?
Absolutely.
You would do that whole thing.
Yes, I would have done it. Now, when he's doing that, I'm like, okay, so he needs a line. So I basically start unraveling the line a little bit in a control way, and then lowering the spool as he's going down. So he always has a line. He just has to do this and grab it and come out. So I lower it, and I'm on top of him, like looking down the hole. And I see like the tank going down, and then he pops at the bottom at that level. And I can see him like attaching his things, and I'm dangling the line in front of his face, basically. So he always knows this is the guideline. If you need to get out, there's this. This is it. And at that point, when he grabbed the line and he gives me an okay, and he starts exploring, that's when I start thinking, like, I'm about to do this. Like, I'm going to have to do this. And I'm looking through the hole and just thinking, like, okay, what tank do I take off first?
Was there any way you could do it without taking the tanks off?
Absolutely no chance.
Okay.
No, 2 tanks wouldn't fit through the hole, like, together. That was how, it's the smallest thing I've ever seen. And so I'm just thinking, like, man, I'm going to have to do this. This is going to suck. But that got replaced by, I hope that whatever is down there is worth it. Like, we're going to do this, and it's going to suck. But I hope whatever's down there is amazing. And the cave goes for miles or something happens. And as I'm looking through the hole, I can see his light, like, scanning and stuff in the hole. He's swimming down there. And I'm like, man, I wonder. And then at some point, he looks up, and he's like, I'm coming up. And I'm like, okay. So he comes up. I help him. Same thing. No mount. Tank above. I grab the tank, put it on the side. He comes out. He starts attaching stuff. And he's like, there's nothing down there. Like, it's just a room, and that's it. Like, we didn't even lay line down there. We don't want anyone to go down there. Like, we didn't even lay line to where the hole is. We, like, picked it up and take it away. Like, let's not
Don't
go
go
there.
there.
Yeah. But, man, for a second, I thought I'm going to be
I mean, I'm feeling in my heart just thinking about that. If I was like the third guy, I'm like, those two just went through there. I got to take this blank off.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. But it's really cool because I asked him, I said, you know, how did you get comfortable with, like, yeah, this is a no mount hole. Let me go no mount. Like, it's a no-brainer. It didn't face him. He didn't think for 2 seconds. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go. And he said that apparently in, like, cave conferences and stuff, they bring in, like, a structure and they put it in a pool with, like, smaller holes and stuff. So you can practice no mount in, like, 4 feet of water.
That's
or whatever.
very cool. That I like.
Yeah.
I like that you could do some training, not just
Exactly.
hope you can make it.
So he's like, he said, maybe not cave diving conferences, but just caving, because he does spelunking, he does caving. He's like, in caving conferences, they bring this thing where you fit through holes to see if you're comfortable.
That's great.
And they can open the thing. Like, if you get inside and you're stuck, they just open the door and you come out. So that's how he started kind of getting used to being tied in those things. And I'm like, man, that would be cool for cave diving
for
if you
sure.
if you could practice like
We
that.
could film that, because then when you're stuck, I could open it.
I think you would have gone through that hole. Like, if you get to it, you would have been like, man,
I know,
this is gonna
but I
suck.
don't know. I'm just being honest. You know, I'm always honest about myself.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm as good at taking all that stuff off as you.
yeah,
I think
we
you're
would've-
probably better at
No,
it than
no,
me.
I think
I would have
it's
been
the
like,
same.
I would have needed the
Yeah.
help from you. Like,
For
you know,
sure.
we help each other put all that Sidewinder stuff on.
Yes.
And he's just boom, 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 boom.
Let's go.
That's unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Underground. With remarkable progress in the first
What's this
half
video
mile
about?
of tunnels charted, the expedition couldn't wait to push forward and continue unraveling the
Full face.
mysteries held within the
full face
submerged
rebreathers.
caverns of Panic
But
Plains.
what you're seeing
By
are
the
scenes
third,
from the movie
expedition had made
Sanctum,
remarkable
which is
progress
loosely,
exploring the
and I mean
submerged
very
caverns of
loosely,
Panic Plains Cave,
based on this
pushing
story.
over half a mile into the ancient system. They established a sprawling camp at the legendary Concord Landing, an immense cathedral-like cavity 4 stories tall that stretched the length of over half a mile. This site would be their launch point for daring dives into uncharted tunnels branching off the main chamber. From Concord Landing, the most experienced push divers,
Just like
Andrew,
a
Ron,
quarter
and
of that
Julia,
size.
geared up and dropped back into the cave's gaping entrance shaft. Propelling through the chilled waters, the divers
Indians
traversed a liquid
fly
maze
it
of
through there.
tunnels, snaking ever
Or out of
deeper into the cave. They aimed to determine if a promising tunnel they had spotted earlier continued beyond a constricted area, holding the secret to unlocking more of the cave's hidden wonders. Fueled by the lure of
ChatGPT is good, you have to
exploration,
admit.
Andrew and the
100%.
crew geared up and dropped back into the cave's gaping entrance shaft. The 7 members of the caving expedition swam through the winding underwater passages, their headlamps cutting through the inky blackness. Andrew White
Which
led the
is
team,
cave
checking his
diving.
diving watch every few minutes. They were now over half a mile below the surface and a half mile into the cave system.
Kicking
Andrew
their
signaled
legs
for the group to
to
stop at the
move
passage
forward.
narrowed ahead. He shone his
Instead of
light
backwards.
upwards, illuminating a pile of fallen rocks blocking their path. Andrew checked his air gauge. They were all running low. Divers
so
employ the 3-3-3 rule.
all
You
open
use
circuit.
a third of air to descend, a third of air to ascend, and a third should always be left for emergencies.
Okay, so let's talk about the rule of thirds, because the rule of thirds in cave diving is not about ascending and descending. It's about penetration, right? You use a third to penetrate and then a third to come out with a third for emergencies. And the idea is if you're with your buddy and you use 1/3 to go in, and at the worst possible scenario, which is your turning point, meaning you have 2/3 left, they somehow run out of air or their stuff fails or whatever. Now you have 2/3, 1/3 for you, 1/3 for your body, since you use 1/3 to go in. And, you know, by logic, as long as you both have the same air consumption rate, you both should get out with 1/3 each
Yes, on open circuit.
on open circuit.
Now, we also have to plan our gas as if so we're on rebreathers, but we have to plan our gas as if we're going to be on open circuit. We always are assuming we're going to have to bail out, and bail out just means, everybody, we're back on open circuit. We carry tanks and a regular regulator, assuming our rebreather is going to fail, and then we have to have enough gas to basically get out from the worst possible spot, deepest, furthest part back in the cave.
That's
but
right.
we have other rules of thirds on the rebreather. The scrubber has a life. The oxygen that we carry has a life, and we're supposed to follow rules of thirds on that as well.
Yep.
So if we've used, let's say we have a scrubber that is 6 hours, I'm just making the math easy, then we would not want to go into that cave for more than 2 hours on that scrubber and 2 hours to get out.
Yeah.
Right? So we have 2 hours of scrubber life left. So
Yeah,
there's
but
a lot
even in open water, okay, the rule of thirds is not a third to descend, a third to ascend, right? Because you're exploring down there, right? So how would you explain the rule of thirds to regular divers like open circuit divers? Is it 1/3 to go down and explore? Because then 1/3 to come up is kind of like, what? So on the boats, they tell you come back with 500 PSI.
It's basically like that.
Which is a sixth of your tank.
It's not quite the rule of thirds. I mean, it's basically like use 1/3 of your gas on your outbound portion of your dive, which you should always go against the current first.
Yeah.
Another third basically gets you back into that ascent area, and you're going to basically use the last third for both your safety stop and to get back on the boat. And no matter what, they don't want you on with less than 500, which is already now less than the 1/3 left, because typically you start with 3,000.
Right.
So you're not going to get back on the boat with 1,000. You're going to get back on the boat with 500.
Yeah, which
but
is
the
30
reason
bar,
you can
30,
do that,
40 bar.
But the
Yeah.
reason it's more aggressive, if you will, is because they're planning no deco dives,
Correct.
which means at any point in the dive, in theory, they can go straight to the surface without stopping.
Yeah.
You can't do that here.
But the idea is if you're, let's say, Cozumel, you're going drift diving in like 40 feet of water, you're not going to use 1,000 feet to go down. You're
1,000
probably going to go down and stay down drifting for 2,000 PSI. And when you're at 1,000, you start heading up. That's kind of how
Because you can.
Right.
You're in no. If you have deco, then I use iDeco Pro. Now we have a whole nother planning to go, and how much deco time am I going to have, and I need to reserve gas for that.
But the reason why I mentioned that is because I've seen on boats when divers say, I'm not going to come up when I'm at 1,000. I'm going to come up when I'm at like 200. Like I paid for this air. I'm going to use all of it. The problem is if when you're heading up, let's say you're at 40 feet, 33, 34 meters, something like that, or no, that's 100 feet. But let's say you're at 40 feet, right? Like 15 meters. Mm-hmm. And now you're starting to head up and your body comes to you, I'm out of air. If you have 200 PSI left, like 10 bar left, I mean, you're in trouble from 40 feet. You're both probably going to have to do an emergency ascent of some kind, right? But if you're at 1,000 with 1,000 PSI, you have enough air for two people from 40 feet to go up, do a safety stop, and make it all the way.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think, you
it's
should
always
be conservative.
It's always about the emergency. It's all of these rules are about the emergency, about the what ifs, about the problems. So
yeah, it's not a competition to see who can use the
who
least
cares?
amount of air. I mean, if
Right.
it's a competition to see who has the most air in your tank, then get a Dive Talk Go and come up with 3,000 with a full tank, right?
well, that's gonna
Come on.
game change diving, but
Yeah.
we're gonna get to that.
All right, let's keep going.
They were quickly finishing up their reserves for ascending, so they would have to turn back. Disappointment washed over Andrew. He was hoping this passage might lead to the end of the tunnel, but their search would have to wait for another day. Andrew gave the signal to reverse course. The divers began the long swim back through the dark, claustrophobic tunnels, carefully retracing their path as the first glimmers of daylight appeared ahead. Andrew was already planning their next expedition. Little did he know that this fateful decision to keep on pushing would spell doom for him and his crew. 2 days later, after they were denied entrance by the cave, they descended down once again. This time, they would explore all the cave had to offer. Moving through the silent darkness, the team of divers eventually arrived back at the narrow crevice where they had been forced to turn back on their previous expedition. Andrew gave the signal, and one by one, they began squeezing and struggling through the impossibly tight restrictions friction, their diving cylinders scraping against the jagged rocky walls. Gritting his teeth against the intense pressure, Andrew pushed through until finally the passage opened up before them into an immense underwater borehole. Ascending slowly through the dark water column, the divers rose into a towering tunnel. Their lights danced across the walls, but could not even reach the ceiling, shrouded far above them in blackness.
That is deceiving. And we like to talk about that kind of stuff to educate people. One of the intense you can't feel the pressure. I don't know how to describe it. When you're underwater, right?
Yeah.
And we know you're under pressure, you can't feel the pressure. No. You feel flow if the water's moving, but going against the intense pressure of flow, like current of water moving, that's one thing. But the atmospheric pressure, because you're underwater, you can't feel that. Right. I barely can feel it affect my work of breathing on my rebreather. Right. I know it does, but I can't barely even feel that. Well, so I just don't want people to think, oh, wow, they're so deep that even moving now, the atmospheric pressure is making it hard to move. That is that's just an adjective to make the video sound better.
Well, and what I'm saying is, I think people believe that because they're not divers. They don't understand what equalization is. So what they do is, you go in a pool, you go to like 3 meters or whatever, 10 feet, and your ears are killing you. So you're like, man, if these guys are at 100 feet,
it's easier.
30 meters, then they're blowing up. Like, how can they do it? It's because it's a technique. You learn it on your very first scuba diving class, which is called equalizing. You equalize your ears, and you will not tell if you're at 10 feet or 100 feet or 200 feet. To me, it feels the same. 200, 140, 50, doesn't matter.
Zero.
Feels the same.
And a lot of people that aren't divers will say, well, there's no way I can go down to 100 feet because in a pool going down to 6 feet, I can't clear. And I have to tell new divers, this is the hardest place to clear. And of course, that gets into the principle that the first atmosphere, the first 33 feet is the biggest change in pressure.
Yeah, 10
so
meters,
it's much harder. So imagine 6 feet. Every little foot that you move around in that pool is a giant pressure change.
Yeah.
Right? So it's harder. Once you get down and you're clearing below 33 feet, it gets easier and easier. 1/2 the percent of pressure change per atmosphere of the previous atmosphere. So it all needs to be put in perspective. But anyway, we'll keep going.
In other words, you can go down deep and you won't even feel it.
It's way easier, actually.
Yeah. Powerful current tugged at them as they swam forward. Pushing deeper into uncharted territory, they explored the newfound passage with growing excitement. Andrew tried to suppress his hopes. They had been disappointed before, but the tunnel kept going and going. Just as they were starting to tire, the tunnel ended abruptly. A massive barricade of collapsed boulders blocked their way completely, like a barrier purposefully placed to stop their progress. Andrew shone his light across the impassable blockade in dismay. There would be no pushing through this. With no choice but to turn back, the team reluctantly began their long return journey through the network of tunnels back to their distant camp at the cave's entrance.
Look at this.
Their triumph of discovery had become disappointment once more. They had hoped that they would find even greater secrets behind the rocks, but what they found was another block to their dreams. The cave, however, had one more trick up its sleeve.
The initial exploration of the air caves, the airfill caves, had this excellent collaboration. Now we're going one step further, because even though our scientists can get into the airfill caves and collect samples and test specimens, we cannot get underwater.
As Andrew and his team neared the expedition's end, eager to recount amazing tales of their subterranean discoveries, the Earth had plans of its own, one that would threaten to bury them forever. On the arid plains above, a ferocious storm awoke. 2 years of pent-up rain unleashed in a few frenzied hours, triggering a relentless flood through the porous limestone. In a matter of minutes, millions of gallons of water had infiltrated through minute fractures in the rock. Far below, as Andrew and his team swam through the twisting passages, the rock walls around them began to rumble and crack under the tremendous pressure. Chunks of stone broke free, plunging downward and clouding the water with sediment. Alarmed, they turned back toward the distant entrance, kicking faster now against the strengthening current. Desperately, they sought an escape, searching for some small fissure or tunnel branching off the main passageway. The way behind was completely blocked, and ahead lay only unknown darkness. Their situation seemed hopeless, and the floodwaters continued to rise.
All right, so just to summarize what's going on. So they go into this cave. They get to a point where they explore, and then they're like, let's turn around and come back some other day. When they turn around, they realize that it's blocked by rain and rocks and mud and all kinds of stuff. So they have no way but to keep exploring. Like, we either stay here and probably gets flooded till we die.
Or crushed by rocks.
Or whatever. Or we just keep exploring and maybe find another exit. You know, like sometimes you find a traverse. You find there's another opening somewhere in the middle of a jungle or whatever. So they're like, dude, maybe there's another opening somewhere. Let's just keep going. And so that's what happened. They could not get out the way they came in. They have to go in and hope for the best.
Andrew realized with dawning horror that the heavy rainfall had begun to saturate the porous limestone of the cavern ceilings and walls. Over months and years, slightly acidic rainwater had also gradually eroded fissures into the limestone. Now, the added weight of the waterlogged rock caused stress fractures to split open. The team tried to hurry back to the cavern entrance as rocks and sediments shook loose around them. But soon, the passage ahead was blocked by large boulders. They turned to find another route, but then the deafening vibration of the ground above increased as the rainfall intensified. The passage ceiling behind them gave way in seconds, torn apart by the extreme water pressure inside the saturated cavern. Andrew and his team were trapped deep inside the caves, their exit sealed off by the collapse. The divers realized they would have to find another way out if the unstable cavern passages didn't flood or fully implode first. With oxygen running low, Andrew led them deeper into the
By the way, I just want to point out really quick what this is. This light right here. So some rebreathers have this light. We call it a HUD for short, but it stands for heads up display. And that light basically tells you if the gas inside the loop that you're breathing is safe to breathe. So it will be green for it's safe, yellow for it's getting close to unsafe, and then red for unsafe. It's either too low on oxygen or too high on oxygen. They're both bad things. Hypoxia and hyperoxia, they're called. So that's what that green light is. So if you see a movie or a show or whatever, and they have something, a rebreather, and there's a light, that's what that is, a HUD. It's a heads-up display.
Treacherous caverns, hoping and praying for a miracle. Now, trapped halfway up the cave's entrance shaft, all routes to the surface were closed behind a collapsed rubble pile. Perched on a fragile ledge, Andrew and Vicky felt the ceiling groan and crack above them, poised to bury them like a giant's fist. Time was not on their side. They faced two harrowing choices: gamble on a rescue through shifting rock and hope fading fast, or plunge into the cave's flooded maze, attempting a desperate crawl to freedom. Ever the bold adventurer, Andrew chose to risk his life.
If we went on an expedition,
hope in hand, he went into the abyss,
and our only way to save ourselves is to find another opening, another cenote, and we find it and survive. That would be
trials
epic.
And things that are going to be put in front of that group to prevent them from getting out safely.
With a background in cave diving and rescue missions, Andrew played a crucial role in the intense journey that unfolded beneath the Earth's surface. What followed was an intense escape of swimming, climbing, and clawing through the cave's flooded labyrinth. Their headlamps flickered like dying fires in the murky water, the air thick with fear and the stench of limestone. Ron's faint radio signal pierced the rock somewhere ahead, guiding them like a beacon in this most dangerous of moments. They rationed each sip of water and morsel of food from their packs, their only chance of having enough strength to make it out. The floodwaters continued rising relentlessly around them. They were forced to squeeze through impossibly tight tunnels and sharp rock crevices that ripped their wetsuits. Lungs burning, they finally surfaced in a small upper chamber, gasping for breath. Onward they pressed through the darkness, propelled by rapidly dwindling hope. Just as it seemed their strength might fail, Andrew saw it, a tiny shaft of daylight far above. Time was not on their side. As Andrew took the risk to swim to the cave entrance, boulders the size of small cars were still falling around him. His flashlight had died, and the cave was now nothing but pitch black, using only the guide rope and his instinct to guide him through. He went inch by inch, hoping not to cause another cave-in. He knew time was a precious commodity. The cave systems were still filling with water, and he was not sure how long the others could stay in that pocket of air in the cave. Against all odds, Andrew painstakingly swam across the chasm between falling debris and rocks in a few hours to reach the surface to call for help. It was a rush against time before the others who were trapped underground ran out of water and oxygen, for this was a ticking time bomb. The cave could collapse in on itself any time. Upon arriving 32 minutes later, the rescue team focused on establishing communication with the 14 cavers still trapped underground. Fortunately, they were able to contact the trapped individuals using two-way radio capable of transmitting signals through solid rock. Despite being buried deep underground, the trapped cavers remained brave and optimistic, having rationed their limited food and water supplies. The rescuers began their descent into the cave's depths. All too soon, they found themselves squeezed inside nightmarish tunnels that squeezed their bodies. The sharp walls closed in. Darkness enveloped.
You can't go 27
Pressing
hours
forward, the
without
team grappled with concealed...
Okay, they were like rationing their food for... I mean, I guess they were rationing because they didn't know how long they were going to be there, but they were there for 27 hours. Come on, you can't go without eating for a day? Stop.
I can go probably from like Atlanta to maybe the Florida line before I need the Burger King 2-for-1
That's
special.
terrible.
You can't go
Come
27 hours.
I've done 3 days. 3 days. I did a fast for 3 days just to see if I can do it.
You did not eat?
I didn't eat.
Did you drink?
Just water. Just water.
You did not eat one drop of food for 3 days?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would just be dead. You can video me dead. I don't think I could do it. 3 days, your body...
Dude.
That'd be hard for me. I'm just saying, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, no, you can totally do it. And the cool thing about the experience is like after like a day and a half or whatever, your hunger just goes away. It's like your body understands like, okay, we're not eating. Let's just stop even telling this guy that he needs to eat.
But at one point, does it also go the opposite where you're famished and super hungry? Is there a point like after 6 hours, 10 hours?
I mean, yeah. I mean, after like 12 hours or whatever, like
you're dreaming of a chicken sandwich.
So the way I started was I did it on like I think it was Thursday night before I went to bed. I stopped eating at like 10 p.m. So I knew that Sunday at 10 p.m. would be my end, like 72 hours. That was my goal, just to prove that I can do it. So I went to sleep, just like you normally stop eating at like 10 or whatever. Then you go to sleep. I woke up the next day. I'm hungry. I need breakfast, so I didn't eat. By lunch, I'm dying. Like, my stomach is like, dude, what are you doing? And then by dinner, I'm like hallucinating almost. But I just drank a lot of water and went to sleep. And then I woke up on Saturday and I'm good. I don't feel any hunger at all. It's the weirdest thing.
Weak or not weak? Are you weak?
No. I have tons of energy, ready to go, super clear. My head is super clear. It's like I'm working on jet fuel. It's unbelievable. It's super cool. I guess you go in ketosis or something,
yeah,
and it works out. But no, I have friends that have gone for a week.
Wow.
They've done a week fast. But you can go for 30 days. That's like the accepted guideline is you can go 30 days without food, 3 days without water. So water is more dangerous. Yeah. And then, 3 minutes without air. If you don't, you can hold your breath for 3 minutes and you can survive. But yeah, 30 days is good. And I heard this, by the way, I did this challenge, the 3-day fast, after I watched an interview with a guy who I really like, Don Shipley. He's a former Navy SEAL. He has this channel called Butts 131 or 121. What is it? But he exposes fake Navy SEALs. All these guys are like, oh, I was a SEAL. And he has a database of everyone who's a Navy SEAL. So he busts them, and he's awesome. I love Don because he does this. But Don said he got interviewed or whatever, or casting for like Survivor or something, like some show. And they were like, well, we want to bring you in because you have all these jungle survival skills where you can like eat snakes and whatnot. and we want to see that on the show. And he's like, well, how long is the taping? And he's like, it's 15 days or whatever. And he's like, oh, I'm just not going to eat for 15 days. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? He's like, dude, I can go without food for weeks. Like, you think I'm going to waste time eating snakes and whatnot? Like, no, I'm just not going to eat. I'm just going to drink water. Do we have water? Yeah. It's like, okay, then I'm good. So he didn't make the show because he kept it real. He's like, I'm not going to be eating, cockroaches just for the show because I would just go without eating. So, yeah, we should give it a shot one time. Just 7 days without eating.
Mm-hmm. We should.
Underground cave systems that added layers of unpredictability and danger. One of the rescuers went on to say that an overwhelming sense of dread came over the rescuers as the cave's twisted passages carried them deeper into the cave's bowels. It was easy to let panic take over their minds, knowing that one wrong turn could leave them just as trapped as those they sought. The tension reached its peak as rescuers reached the team's former camp at Concord Landing. Their breathing grew more labored as they inched ahead into the claustrophobic darkness. At one point, the team found themselves trapped in a rapidly flooding chamber as a result of the rain, but they had to keep pushing on to retrieve the 14 trapped divers. But the determination to save their fellow cavers kept them crawling ahead through the brutal subterranean maze. 27 agonizing hours passed before the first missing diver was finally spotted.
I'm worried about the cold. The cold is what I would be worried about.
That would be
one
way
by
more
one,
of a
the
concern
search
than
teams
me.
located the others, also weak
And they had water because it
disoriented,
was raining,
but
so
miraculously
that's
still
rough.
clinging to life. Strapping oxygen masks to the divers' faces, the rescuers guided them through the treacherous terrain. The journey to the surface was grueling, requiring another 15 painstaking hours. But eventually, all 15 emerged back into daylight, where medical teams awaited to treat them. Though they had narrowly escaped with their lives, the divers' ordeal left lasting scars. Some struggled with memories of the harrowing experience plagued by panic attacks and nightmares. A majority of the crew trapped underneath the caves suffered from severe compression sickness as well as different forms of PTSD that rendered them unable to continue cave exploring. Later, Andrew co-wrote the fictional film Sanctum, loosely based on Panic in Plains and his cave diving expertise. This was Australia's highest-grossing film in 2011. He collaborated with James Cameron on underwater documentaries and 3D ocean exploration films before his tragic death in a helicopter accident in 2012. The legacy of the expedition itself showcases how events can profoundly shape communities.
So that was that. By the way, before we go further, I do want to hear your thoughts on this. Don't go fasting and be like, Gus is a doctor on Dive Talk and he said we should do it. No, don't do it. This was a medical advice.
Wait, are you? You are a doctor, right?
No, but I give the impression.
You weren't. I always thought with
all the time
because you're good at pronouncing those made-up medical words that you invent.
Absolutely. So don't go fasting, not even 3 days like I did, without, I guess, talking to your doctor. I don't know. Just don't do it. But we should do it, I think. We just asked ChatGPT.
The only closed reaction I want to give on this, because I know this video is getting long, is I was thinking about the ending words there where they were saying that, you would have effects, mental effects. You would definitely, would you be able to go back cave diving? I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, absolutely. If I got out, no problem, I'd be able to do it. But that's real, right? They were fearing for their lives if they had PTSD, right? That means that they were at one point in such a high state of panic, nervousness. And in those kind of situations, staying calm, Mike talks about this a lot, is so critical. I love when he described, and Ed as well, they both described how at that point when you are in a very bad situation, every move has to be thought out. Am I going to move my right arm? And why?
Yeah.
I'm going to move my right arm and I love that. I love that level now of complete and utter concentration rather than complete and utter panic, which we know kills you. But that can cause people to have severe suffering. I don't know, that hit me here at the end. That was my final reaction.
And the way, Ed and Mike and others deal with these issues is real. They've been in situations where they've had to do this. We had Mike on the show telling a story where he said that, I had to think about every move I make has to have a purpose. We have had Ed on the show. Unlike those guys who do this for real and had this very real, approach to troubleshooting, Sanctum is the complete opposite. It's full of mistakes and inconsistencies and ridiculousness. And we actually reacted to Sanctum a while ago, and I'm going to leave the video right here. Complete insanity. But, dude, I want to go to this cave. Looks awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if we can, but I don't want to fast for even 3 hours. Bye, everybody.